That's where you start. You
Right.
use all the tax efficiencies and then you step up into different things.
Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio, and I'm super super excited to be here because we're going to be having an amazing and interesting conversation with the very latest that happens not just here in the United Kingdom, but in fact all over the entire world as well. All right, so make sure you stay tuned because I would love to hear your thoughts and your opinions on this. All right, share your thoughts. Let me know what you feel with regard to the recent restrictions that were lifted and how exactly what kind of thoughts you're having about these restrictions that were lifted. Did they do the right thing? Is it too soon? Is it too late? Can they actually save the economy? Why do you think they did it? If you want to share all of those with me, please do get in touch with me and share it with me because I would love to hear what you have to say. All right, so don't forget to do that. Now I want to very quickly get into this conversation about how we are finally free. All right, or rather the Scots are finally free. All right, because I want to very quickly tell you about all of the things that happened in Scotland yesterday with regard to, the lockdown, with regard to all of that. So you can have an understanding of what exactly changed and what exactly you need to do if you are heading out. All right, now yesterday was actually Freedom Day for Scotland, and the reason it was yesterday was obviously they waited out and they wanted to see how exactly the situation sort of panned out, if I put it that way, before it sort of panned out before things got much much worse, right? And that's just why they sort of that's why they sort of extended their lockdown, or they decided to not exactly live lockdown on the 19th of July like England did, but actually wait a bit more and just see how the situation works out, right? Now yesterday they actually lifted most of those COVID restrictions that were there in Scotland, and because of that they've actually moved beyond the level zero restrictions, right? What that essentially means is that a lot of these people will now actually be able to get back to how their lives were. They'll be able to go to the restaurants and the clubs, wherever they used to go to before lockdown, before the pandemic, before all of that happened. They will be able to go to all of that, right? Because there are no longer any of those restrictions. There are no longer any of these you know none of these restrictions are in place any longer, right? Which means that they don't really have to do physical distancing and limiting a certain amount of customers in the restaurant. So I guess in the perspective of a restaurant, that's actually very good news for them, right? However, even though that's the case, if you are in a restaurant, you still have to wear your mask, right? You still have to make sure that you sanitize and you follow some of those very obvious guidelines that we followed before when the pandemic first started going like crazy. You know what I mean? And we took specific precautions, right? Like wearing a mask. So don't forget to do that because your safety is very very important, and the only way you can actually make sure that you're safe is by making sure that you follow these guidelines. Okay, now physical distancing rules and limits on gatherings, like I said, have been removed, and all venues are actually allowed to function and reopen as they normally did. And there will also be changes to self isolation, right? Because if you come into close contact with someone who has tested positive and you get a negative test, then you don't really have to self isolate, right? Which means that you can actually, if you get a negative PCR test, you don't really have to self isolate. However, obviously if it comes back positive, you'll have to self isolate for the prior, or for the safety of other people and the people around you, because no one, or not just here in Scotland, but in fact not any country, no country can actually afford another COVID outbreak, right? Because the truth is, China is currently going through a COVID outbreak one more time. And this happens to be the worst ever since its first COVID outbreak in Wuhan, all the way back in 2019. All right, so it's important to keep that in mind. It's important for you to remember that as well when you're heading out. So don't forget to do that. Now, all of these outdoor events that were happening, that used to happen, all these music festivals and whatnot, well, these can happen as well. So, if you are someone who's excited about all of those large scale events and whatnot, well, that's absolutely amazing. All right, because you can actually do that. You can actually have all of those events. You can have all of those events. However, if you're going to have outdoor events that will have more than 5,000 people, you actually have to write and apply for permission. Whereas if you have an event for people, or if you have an event for more than 2,000 people indoors, you still again have to write and apply for permission. All right. And indoor hospitality venues are, in fact, required to collect the contact details of customers to help with test and protect. All right. So, in a way, it might not be doing everything the way you want it to, but at least, you're getting your freedom, and you're getting to do what you want to do, as long as as long as you follow the few rules that are in place. All right. And obviously, people will still have to or rather wear their masks in when they're in social settings, like the doctor, or they're in shops and whatnot. They still have to wear those masks, right? So it's important to keep that in mind as well. And it's also important for them to socially distance for 2 meters if they are in healthcare settings, such as hospitals or doctors' surgeries, and even dentists, right? Now let's talk about, the reaction that Scottish people had with regard to, lockdown being lifted. Now, for a lot of people, they were very excited, especially a lot of young people who were so used to going clubbing every night, who would always be out every night. This was like absolutely amazing for them, right? And the reason that was the case was obviously because, they were excited to finally be able to go out and have fun and do the things that they used to do, right? Now, there was actually a person called Luke, who had been clubbing ever since he was 15 years old, and he's 19 now. So he said that he's going to get really busy with going out every night and making sure that he makes up for all of those days that he couldn't go out, because Scotland was in lockdown for 506 days. So it means that, they're going to go clubbing and have a lot of fun. However, Sturgeon actually urged the public to continue to take sensible precautions, because even though all of these legal coronavirus rules have been lifted, the pandemic is still there, right? So it's important to keep that in mind, and it's important to make sure that it's important that you make sure that you still follow those rules, and make sure you take care of yourself as well. All right. Now, make sure you stay tuned, because I will be back in a few more minutes after this break to keep talking to you. So until then, make sure you stay tuned.